What's up, everyone? Micah, you had an interesting week this week.
Yeah, I started work again, finally. Um, I'm at Uber now. I'm in their corporate partnerships, and outreach. It's pretty fucking interesting. At first, I was a little pessimistic about the idea of working for Uber because I was like, it's a well-established company. Like, their product's pretty like simple. Like we all know it, we all use it. I was like, so what can I do that? Like, what can I do within that? And this week, like finally starting, got to see it's way more dense than that. Depending on the vertical, depending on the strategy, um, or like on a case by case basis, it's very different. So I've only been there for what, 5 days, so I'll learn more going forward. But it's obviously been a great first week, and I'm super excited to be there. So that was my week.
And who did you meet in the bathroom?
Yeah, so of all places, I got to meet Dara, who is the wonderful CEO of Uber, and it was in the bathroom. And I was like, no way, that's actually him. Like, I'm actually like tripping. So I actually obviously introduced myself. It was like like trying to like hide back and not be like a fanboy. But it was super dope. He's great. He actually did like the town hall like just before that, and I thought he was in San Francisco. And then like I see him in the bathroom. I'm like, oh shit, you actually do work here. So it was pretty insane. So a great first week. So I'm excited to see where it goes from here.
I love how PR friendly that was. The great CEO, the amazing CEO.
Yeah, I'm trying to
But
give myself brownie points already.
yeah, but I actually started a new gig as well. So I'm entering the workforce once again. I'm at this company called Crush, which is very similar to what I was doing before in brand management. So it's taking e-commerce brands and they usually, well, we prefer them to have a large social media base, and then we help them get onto Amazon. So it's going to be managing brands in the e-commerce kind of market. And had my first week, it was solid. A lot of the same team as I worked with before, but man, I don't know how I feel about uh, kind of tackling entrepreneurship and the job at once, but it's going to be a challenge.
I'm sure
Felipe,
you're up
you
for it,
were.
Gav. I'm sure you're up for the challenge there.
Yep, always up for it. Zachary, why are you in a suit?
I'm in a suit because my nephew Henry was baptized earlier today. So went over
Nice.
there and yeah, they quoted that it was going to take an hour. It ended up taking like 2.5 hours. The deacon liked to speak. 96-year-old guy that did the baptism. God bless him.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow. Like,
Damn.
it
And
was
Felipe,
good.
you're in Puerto Rico right now. Still, how long you been
Yes.
there?
3 days. But so unlike everyone else who's been working or starting new work, I've been enjoying the island. So really interesting place. Never been to the lovely U.S. territory of Puerto Rico. Came here for a wedding, but gonna leave tomorrow. So it's been great.
Beautiful. Is the income tax savings worth the living lifestyle down there?
That's so like I was actually super curious about that because it's the only place I think you can as a U.S. citizen not pay U.S. federal tax and pay
Hmm.
the Puerto Rican tax instead. And I was thinking about it a lot while I was here, and I guess my conclusion is probably not. I mean, if you're like kind of a reclusive person that doesn't like going out to like really nice restaurants or having like a big friend group, I don't know, like maybe it makes sense, but there isn't like a lot to do from what I've seen in Puerto Rico, and you have to spend 6 months in a day here to claim citizenship or whatever, or not citizen residency. So I don't know. I've been wondering a lot about it. I haven't spent enough time, but it is like an interesting question. Is it really worth it? Also, I think if you live in Puerto Rico, you have to ask yourself how much of the opportunity cost are you missing out from being in like a dynamic place like New York, Washington D.C., San Francisco, Los Angeles, right? So there's a lot going into that. So it's a loaded question that I don't know if I can answer, but yeah,
Yeah.
Don't alienate our large Puerto Rican fan
yeah.
base, Lupe.
Right. Yeah, I mean, Zach and I actually thought about that for a minute, but 100, what is it, 181 days that you have to
Yeah.
be in there? Yeah, that'd be super. I don't know. Interesting. But to all of our listeners, we welcome you back to another episode of Year One Podcast. Episode 20, we're on now, almost halfway through the year. But this episode, we are going to cover a couple topics like product market fit and Marc Andreessen's thoughts. I know we had some conflicting opinions on what he said last week, so we're going to clear the air on that. And then we also have Sam Altman's, it almost seems like how he wants to take on humanity and how to fix everything. And we'll finish up with some stats on side hustles and how side hustles are becoming more and more popular, especially with the younger generation. But Zach, do you want to clear the air with this
Yeah.
Marc Andreessen quote?
I would like to clear the air, and we'll have it linked in the show notes. It seems to be a part of. He must have taught a course at Stanford Business School at some point, and this came up as a part of his curriculum. But as we were talking about it last week, we were first saying industry, and then we were talking about market. And I know that I left it pretty confused as to what his point was, and then where we fell on how we were thinking about it. His thesis is the most important thing is finding, as Gavin, you said, the product market fit. He says the team is obviously how you get there, and there's often a large prioritization in the VC circles and just in the culture at large around the team. The product is obviously important, but the counterpoint that he uses is if you have a great product but nobody wants to buy it, then what good is it? And he says that the most successful startups that he's seen are obsessed with finding that product market fit as quickly as possible. And then a strong market can pull a product out of a startup. So I think that's interesting. Granted, he's been through this through his own entrepreneurial experience and then with his VC fund, I'm sure hundreds, if not thousands of times. We are all new initiates into this game, so I defer to his knowledge and experience. I didn't understand it at first, but now I get what he's saying with like, okay, be obsessed with finding the product market fit. The number one killer for startups is a lousy market, is not getting that match, and a lot of startups die before they reach that point.
So do you agree with him that market is the most important?
I would frame it as product market fit is the most important, but I would agree with that. Yes.
Interesting.
But even that, it's like you need a team to put the products and you need them to be dynamic enough to be able to pivot.
Yeah, and to that I would say there's the best companies in the world that created the markets themselves. Like you think about smartphones, that was never a market, of course. And ChatGPT, that was never a market before. So I wonder what he would say on that. And I'm sure he'd just say, "Oh yeah, there's the team, then the product, and if it makes sense in that beautiful kind of timing effect of the
Micah and his
Mike
tech
is struggling
issues.
again, but we'll keep moving." But yeah, like what do you think he would say to that? Like,
He addresses that. He said, the second point is, can't great products sometimes create huge new markets? Absolutely. This is a best case scenario, though. And then he gives an example, and he says, understand that I'm not saying that you should shoot low in terms of quality of team or in terms of the product. But I wouldn't count on your product creating a new market from scratch. And frankly, that is a huge lift. to
Yeah.
create a new product from scratch,
Hmm.
or a new market from
Market.
scratch, rather, and a new
Yeah.
product. That's a huge lift too, creating a new product from scratch.
But the
Yeah.
thing is if you create your own,
Understand.
yeah, it's tough though, because then you have people like Steve Jobs who like absolutely just don't pay attention to what other people think, and then they just create some product that launches what is Apple now, $2 trillion company, just basically off of his essentially intuition, right? And
Hmm.
so it's tough. I guess there's an exception to every rule.
See Felipe's point in that there are a certain caliber of exceptional products that do create new markets. And he addresses that in his article, but he just says that that's like, as you said, that's the exception, not the rule. And even if you look at Apple, I'm listening now to one of the biographies on Steve Jobs, and their first products were finding the product market fit. It was like the Mac One and the Mac Two were very much hitting what the like nerdy PC people wanted at that time, when the concept of the personal computer was just coming out. Um, so yeah, I think that there's certainly different stratospheres of startups, and I think that the hardest possible one is creating a new market, a new product that creates a new market.
Yeah, I don't know. It's strange because you have entrepreneurs also like Elon, like with SpaceX. That was a company that wasn't started as, okay, I have an idea of how we're going to make a ton of money. It was, I'm going to launch these rockets, and then if it lands, then we can figure out actually what we do, because there is no economics going to Mars. Like, you just have to pray to God that the U.S. government's willing to fund you, and the U.S. government hasn't like given them a contract to go to Mars yet, or actually maybe they have, but at the moment it was then, oh, okay, so now we can move stuff up to space at cheaper costs and get contracts that way. So I don't know. I think I really like what Andreessen's saying, because it gives you a roadmap as, I'm not the next wonder kid, king entrepreneur, smarter than everyone else, and I know what everyone else wants. Uh, Type of approach, right? Which is product market fit, solve a small solution, or give a small solution to a problem and scale it out. So yeah, I appreciate it. It's just tough. I feel like, because all the big entrepreneurs we know about did it a different way, or most of them, right? Like,
Mm.
I
Musk,
mean,
Jobs. Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
they are successful, but their products just aren't like super duper mainstream, and that we use it all the time. And I think that's something that I don't think that this means that you have to approach entrepreneurship in like, what is the greatest growing market possible, because that's probably a losing prospect too, as we've talked about with the trends. And then maybe we would all just go into energy or something where it's like, yeah, like the market is always going to be growing, but that doesn't strike me as the solution to this problem.
yeah, and all the companies that we're talking about, their products were, I'd argue, 10x better than anything on the market. Like, for example, Uber just made it 10 times easier for transportation. And with the iPhone, it just made it 10 times better in terms of interacting with people, doing things that you couldn't do and only on a big computer. So I feel like if that product doesn't make the existing market or existing product 10 times better, that's when what you were saying, Micah, is all those founders and people that we have never heard of because their product just wasn't that good.
Right. Fair enough. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
even
I also
go
think
ahead. Go. Sorry.
oh no, yeah. I mean, on top of that, I think that this point also highlights the importance of knowing a market, right? And that's like the biggest challenge that I think people have, is how do you get the exposure to every in and out of a different market, right? I think we've been talking about these different big entrepreneurs, from Hyundai to like Aristotle and Onassis. Both of those cases, those people deeply understood what was in that market. Onassis knew the shipping industry, because at one point he became like the head of all Greeks moving in and out of Argentina. And Hyundai, the guy lived in Korea, understood the needs of a car that has to be manufactured for Korean people. So yeah, I mean, that really brings up that I think that's like the biggest gap. It's not really the product. It starts with knowing the market really, really well,
Yeah.
right?
Or
But
even
yeah,
just
go ahead,
taking a
Marco.
guess
Sorry.
at the market and letting the free market decide if what you think is actually possible or not. Right? I'll give you two use cases. One, because we talked about it, we've been talking about it for the last couple of weeks, but look at NVIDIA, right? Their stock price, whenever they were founded, has been relatively stable, right? Now they've found the market and they have the best product. And now they own 90% of the market, and look at their stock price. I was looking at the other $4 trillion. Like, what? That's the amount of shares you have outstanding. That's insane, right? I guess another
I guess we'll have to
use
wait to
case
hear
would
his
be like
analysis of the
Netflix,
stock.
for instance, right?
Got me on the
Understanding
edge of my
what
seat.
streaming is and
Yeah,
what
he's
it
about
can
to
turn
give
into, right?
the
COVID
billion-dollar
happens, and now
stock tip.
everything is on Netflix or HBO, and you're seeing all
But
these other companies
I think
follow
what
it.
he
So
was kind
it's
of
really
getting at, and something
interesting
that
to
I was just
see
listening to
how the
from
markets
the
adjust and
Dyson
then going forward
founder,
from there.
Yeah.
he did
Hopefully
15
that's
years of
there. Oh my
work,
god, my Wi-Fi's so
5,000
bad.
plus iterations on his inventions, and that's when he found product market fit. So like the timing and market knowledge, like you were saying, Felipe, all has to make sense and all has to line up. Like there's just so many factors that make sense, and it's those that understand the market, have the right timing, and then find that use case and that kind of group of people that resonate with it.
And on top of what kind of Micah was hitting upon, which was you just have to be in the market and just like throw a bunch of shit against the wall and see what
Yeah.
sticks, right? Kind of that idea. I think this is where AI, I mean, us in our group chat where I sent a video that like Gavin had seen earlier about Bubble.io and all these. Micah, you might want to mute your. Okay, yeah. But yeah, basically this idea with like Bubble.io where you can just make a product super quick, test it out on the market and see if people are interested, and then you can move on if there's interest, right? And proceed with your idea. And so I think that's going to lower the cost of just seeing if your product even has legs to stand on before you hire developers and you go to VCs and you get raise money, right? So
Yeah, man, the world is changing. And if you're listening, you can make a software. Like, it's not very difficult. It is just crazy. But also, talking about the world changing, Sam Altman had some interesting points in his little article called Moore's Law, which we'll link. But he was talking about the revolution of AI, how that will change wealth and wealth distribution. But Felipe, you brought this to our attention. What was he kind of getting at in terms of how to solve this new innovation?
well, I think it was interesting in two ways. One, you have someone who has an incredible amount of knowledge about artificial intelligence, right? Like the leader of the AI revolution, giving his thoughts on what's coming next. While at the other on the other, and so like you have that interesting perspective. Then you have the other perspective of someone who's like an quote unquote inexperienced, I guess, political philosopher, so to speak, giving his thoughts on what society should do in response to all these technologies. And I don't know. I felt conflicted. Like I thought it was super interesting his idea that basically AI is going to do everything for everyone and we won't have any work to do. Basic area, and I think this kind of ties in a lot with our earlier discussions with Micah about Naval and what that world looks like. But on the other hand, he gives these political solutions, basically, kind of like a communist manifesto kind of thing that kind of reminded me of, which was basically society is we're not going to have any work, so we need to kind of create some type of UBI to assure and redistribute land in some capacity with taxes, and that will be the magic solution to all of our problems. So I don't know. I think it was like utopian on one hand, but also interesting to see where he was going with the AI revolution.
Yeah. And like a quick little brief, I think he was saying that cost of labor will eventually go down to zero due to AI robots doing all of the work, and then essentially all of the costs will be AI robots, and then creating an American equity fund that would be funded by taxing companies and privately held land. Do you guys agree with that? Like taxing all of the private companies and private land, isn't that kind of the source of wealth and things that we want to be a part of? Like I want a company, I want land.
I mean, there already is taxation of private companies and private land,
Well,
right?
of
It's
course,
just to
but he
what
says increasing
extent.
it a a ton to fund this whole thing.
Mm. I mean, look, certainly there's a big change coming. It's hard to sit here and predict what it's going to be like in 10, 20, 30 years. He says in that article the next 100 years are going to see more technological advancements than from the time where we invented fire or the wheel. And I think it's just so hard to foreshadow what those changes will mean, both in terms of work and in society at large. And I would be very hesitant to get behind with full force any sort of solution at this point, especially one that's might be counter to the incentives of private individuals growing the best possible companies that they can.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I had a
My suspicion.
I had a
Go
differing.
for it.
I think I had just a differing opinion about it. One, I just didn't know his like. Obviously, I knew Sam Altman and I've been studying like all the shit he's done with OpenAI and all that stuff. But I didn't know his full body of work, so I was really interested when you sent this. And when I started reading it yesterday, I was kind of like, I guess I think the position that you guys took, like maybe this like doesn't work. But when I think what's happened a lot with capitalism, and we can talk about this obviously in episodes as we continue further. But I think at its core, it started really good, and it's still such a really good thing. This idea that money is a bad thing or capitalism is a bad thing is horrible. What is wrong, no, is like, of course, it's a good thing. Like, money is a good thing, it's not a bad thing. What is bad is crony capitalism. So I think where he's trying to go with this is that if we are able to create the equity fund that you alluded to, Gavin, and sort of give all individuals equity in something, you're incentivized to produce a more economically driven society. Because obviously to your benefit, and that makes sense. I don't see why, like, in what world that's not a good
Equity
thing.
isn't a birthright. Equity is to be earned, not to be
Yeah.
given.
But that, I guess that's the point. But if your incentives are everything, right? It's why businesses give incentives. If you're incentivized for your country to do well, and because of that, the whole society does well because you have equity, you're going to be incentivized to do great things for the country. That's a net positive thing. That's not a zero sum game.
But where I disagree is if he's providing equity or a dollar amount to every American citizen and all of these costs of labor are reducing and he says that all of these costs will go down, therefore increasing the capacity we can spend on goods, then won't the goods just raise in prices directly correlated to how much we're given? Because if we're all at a baseline, that's the new zero. And then it's a whole new cycle of, okay, now let's push it up because we need more money because the cost of goods just went up. So it's just like this cycle of kind of endless, like giving more equity, giving more UBI. I don't see how that could be productive ever. And just the fact that nobody's earned that. So what, we're
Well, I
just
guess the idea.
Oprah Winfrey now, just
Well,
giving everybody
no,
a piece of land.
I guess the idea that he's trying to emphasize, and I think like that's the point that he's trying to iterate, is that if you give incentives to individuals, that money's just going to flow back into the system. It's not like you lose out on that, like a company loses out because they have, like, everyone has equity. So I mean, that's the point that I took from it. You guys might have took something else.
Yeah.
But we can obviously discuss that. I don't see how that's
like, it's not a zero sum game, right? And like, I don't think that there's certainly the last few years have proved that there's not a finite amount of of dollars in the system. But where I just have hesitancy is like this idea of everybody being entitled to some sort of financial benefit. I think everybody is entitled to their God-given rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But I don't think that means that I automatically get equity in I didn't understand the full like what it would be if it's pretty much like a investment fund. I didn't understand what he was saying, but I have hesitancy towards really acknowledge or accepting that as a solution at this point in the game. I think it would be premature.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's I don't know. I just think he put a random welfare program and said, okay, we're not going to need other welfare programs. This is the only one we need in the future. And knowing governments, like they don't just stop spending money, they find creative ways to keep spending tons and tons of money. So there's that point. I think it was a little bit naive. But also on the other hand, there is a question of, is he correct in saying that we're gonna like essentially not have any work to do and we're just gonna be like hanging out because everything went to zero? Uh, the robots are fixing the robots. Energy costs have gone down to zero. That's also like a really interesting question, which I actually don't know the answer to. But part of me thinks that humans are always just gonna find more problems, and to solve those problems, you're going to get paid to do it, right? Like,
Yeah.
so I don't know. That's kind of my thought process behind it, and I don't know. It's very similar to like Karl Marx. I mean, he is right. We're in like a big revolution, the AI revolution, like the Industrial Revolution. That's when Karl Marx wrote his uh, manifesto. So yeah, I don't know. I just thought that there was a lot of similarities, and yeah.
I just want to plug a book that I think everybody should read, which is The Singularity is Near, but it touches on this subject of advancements in AI and where things are headed. But to your point, Felipe, he makes the point of like if if the world is not using all of the capacity in or the data capacity that it can, then there's always an opportunity for arbitrage or more jobs to be created. Because if we have more data that we can use up, there will always be this opportunity to keep on growing, essentially, which is an interesting point. But I'm gonna move on to our
Wait, I
last.
just wanted to say one last thing about that one. And this wasn't the main point of his article at all, but he did talk about taxing real estate. And in that, he said that he's assuming that the value of real estate is going to double in the next 12 years because as the world starts to understand the shifts AI will cause, the value of land is one of the truly few finite resources will increase at a faster rate. I thought that was interesting.
Mhm.
So buy land before the AI robot people take over.
Bill Gates beat you there. He's buying all the farmland, freaking putting fake meat in our system.
Interest rates are too high too. I'm sorry.
Crazy.
Okay, move on. Go, Gavin.
Yeah. I have a lot of thoughts on the food system, but that can be another episode. But I found an interesting article which went over side hustles and how people are more and more likely to adapt a side hustle. And some stats on that is that 53% of Gen Z has gotten into a side hustle and make an average of $810 a month. Like, do you guys have side hustles at all? Do you try to supplement your income in any way?
I mean, my whole life is kind of just a one big side hustle. So
I have projects that I do side hustle as well. So, uh, yeah, I mean, it makes sense. You have a lot of time now. to like do things with remote work, especially if you're not doing something for your main job. You're kind of like, what do I do? Makes sense. Yeah.
And that's a great point, because I feel like that's almost a counter to what Altman was saying in the last article that we touched on. Is that I don't think that if you eliminate a lot of the jobs that we have now, people are going to find a way to display their creative outlet and to make value, right? And look at this: 50% of people are doing side jobs to the job that they're already taking on. I'm sure some of that is out of wanting more income, but I think another part of it too is a desire to create and to share that creation with the marketplace.
I agree. And I think that this might be a little wishy-washy here, but I
Uh-oh.
think that the percentages of the, like, this 53% of people going and doing something else is a sign of people wanting to follow their true purpose, or like having their true purpose being in their work. And people
Mhm.
just aren't finding that at their current job, or looking for another outlet to present itself. And
I
like that
disagree.
OpenAI thing
I think
will
people are doing it.
allow for that, because
I
people are
think
becoming more and more purpose driven.
I think people. Can you guys hear me? I think people are doing it out of necessity.
Yeah.
They're not doing it because they want to. They're doing it because of necessity. And I think the point that Altman is trying to make is that AI is going to enable people to do this on a wide scale, because it's going to eliminate the mundane. You know, if we can make robots do it, then why the hell humans? Why in the hell are humans doing it? I think that's the point that he's trying to make. I think people have side hustles because they honestly have to. People have to pick up the
Financially,
yeah, without a doubt, without a doubt. I mean, we just talked about Sam Altman's paper. I mean, the price of to own a house has went up. The price for health has went up. The price for regular basics, food, gas has went up. Like, and there's no sign of them going down. So I don't think people are having side jobs because it's like, oh, like I'm trying to do something more creative. They're doing it out of necessity. People are becoming Uber drivers on top of their second job out of necessity. They're not doing that for fun. There's not like we're doing this for fun.
but I don't think it's 100% in one way or the
Obviously
other.
not. Obviously
Like,
not. Obviously not. But I mean, it's just like look at the economics on it. Like I think like, and I'll come with the hard facts, but like most people can't afford homes. Most people can't do a
yeah,
lot of the things that they want to
and
do. Like that's just the reality of the situation. So,
it's yeah, the cost of living has outpaced wage growth
right.
substantially.
So
You're right on
right.
that. But I also see Gavin's point, where I do see, and this is of course anecdotal. Maybe this data can back it up, but I also understand that it might be out of financial necessity. But there does seem to be a growing interest in starting your own thing, entrepreneurial spirit with our generation. Do you guys feel that too, or is that
Oh no,
just
no, no.
like
I definitely,
self-serving?
I definitely do feel that is true. And with creator content, that's totally plausible. It's just a new form of leverage
Hmm.
that's been added in the last 10 years. So yes, I think a lot of people are being like, some of these things we've been doing that are like relics of the industrial age are sort of out of date. Let me do something where I have the equity in it. I'm not saying that it's false, but I am saying that like a lot of these side hustles, I think the ones that are now present are like, what are they? They're mostly like being an Uber driver on the side or drop shipping or something like that, which is fine because you have equity in it and it's yours and you do it on your time. But I don't think most people are doing it because that's like what they really want to do. They're doing it more out of necessity.
But I think that there's other ones too. There's like being like a yoga teacher, or like teaching tennis on the side, or like selling things online that you make in your
Yeah,
house. Like those are all fall in the same category. But I do hear you in that I think that certainly financial necessity is a large incentive for people to do that. I'm more so curious as to, okay, in a future where in Altman world where the cost of labor is zero, what are people going to choose to do? Are people going to choose to just sit on their behind all day and not produce anything? I don't think
me
so.
either.
I think that, of course, there's going to be a percentage of people that do that, but I think that the majority of people are going to choose to spend their time progressing humanity in one form or the other, at least feeling like they are.
Totally agree. Totally agree. I just think presently that's not the case for what we're looking at. But I obviously am optimistic about that future and what Altman and sort of the tech world thinks about AI and us and a lot of other individuals. Sorry, Felipe.
I'm also curious, like, I think both you, Zach, and Micah are just correct. Like, I don't see it why it can't be both.
Yeah.
Both that people want to become entrepreneurs and then people aren't making enough money, whether that be because we have like we're living beyond our means kind of scenario, right? Situation in this country, or I don't know what it is. And then that kind of pushes you to be an entrepreneur, right? Because it's hard. Like, you have to take care of a lot more stuff. And if you kind of are getting kicked in the butt because you have to make ends meet, that might be the situation. So why not both?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's honestly, why not both?
And maybe the data can like back this up a little bit as well, because just by the spread of who has a side gig and who doesn't, the numbers are basically baby boomers make on average $646 a month, Gen X 670,
This is
Gen
all
Z.
side gigs, right?
Yeah, this is side hustles. Gen X 670, Gen Z 753, millennials 1022.
Interesting.
So the younger it is, the more the percentage of your pay is going to be from a side hustle.
And the more that it matters,
so in a way, it explains the fact that millennials, Gen Z have that burden of student loan debt and all of these costs going up, housing, rent, whatever, and that is definitely driving it. But also, it could be, fuck the average 9 to 5 life. I'm gonna do my own thing. I want to create for myself. All this stuff. So it's almost, it's both points really that can be tied to the data.
Yeah.
That's a great point. And I think that it might be even accelerated by the financial burden that people find themselves in, because like then they're pushed to find those solutions even faster than they would if they were maybe more comfortable and could coach
and to some extent at some like high philosophical level it might be liberating, but on the same side it also might be like, this fucking sucks, right? So it's like, I guess how you utilize it, right? Dan, that's a good one. That's a good one. We're gonna have to talk about that one again. Just, that whole overall thing.
Maybe we can dive deeper into that next episode. But I think this is a good stopping point. Love to thank our listeners once again. But we hope you have a great week ahead, and we'll catch you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.